Hey, wake up. Yeah. Got my man Dave, got my man Dan. You know what time it is, and this is 2-6. Yeah. Ask us, we seatbelts, boy. You better strap up. Conversations is controversy. It's time to act up. Carolina ballistics, where the precision's wicked. Tune in and listen. It get deep if you dig it. No reason to act tough. Carolina ballistics training academy. Ain't no reason to act tough. So listen up.
Hey guys, this is Dan. Sign up for classes, buy merch at carolinaballisticsta.net. That's carolinaballisticsta.net.
Welcome back to the Dan and Dave Show. I'm your host, Daniel Irwin. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. David Harris, is doing training and keeping our lights on. So we thank you, Dave, for that. And we're going to keep on trucking. Today, we got something special going on today. We got a guest host today. He came on before last season, but he's very familiar to you guys. It's the Pastor Barber, Mr. Henry Cowan. Henry Cowan. There we go.
Yes, pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for being back with us. All right. I will say that this show today has been on my mind for a strong year. In fact, I would say that I have built up this platform specifically for this show right here, right? Let me introduce you guys to retired K-9 officer, Mr. Sean Houle.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about this show, brother.
Yeah.
I really am. This is going to be wonderful.
Yeah, that's what's up. I don't want to tell too much of your story. Sean, can you go ahead and tell us what events transpired back in 2021?
Absolutely. So back in 2021, I was a K-9 officer for the city of Kernersville, North Carolina. And I had the dogs, so my specific job was to work our two major highways, and I was out there looking for large amounts of narcotics, illegal weapons, and not just wanted people, but specifically violent wanted people, to try to make our streets a little bit safer. And so that was my role with my K-9. Well, that night, February 21st, I was on duty. My shift started like normal. The way that I would leave out for work, my wife, at the time, my oldest boy was 5. My youngest was 8 months old. So what we would do is if they were home, which they almost always were, I would get in my Tahoe. Ellie and the 2 boys would be on the front porch. She'd be holding my 8-month-old, and my 5-year-old would be standing next to her. And I'd bump the lights and bump the siren, for the kids, wave to them out the window, and I'd head out the driveway and head on to work. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how my shift started, just like normal, like always. And the last thing on my mind was the thought that could potentially be the last time I see my family, that I physically see my wife and my 2 boys.
Wow.
Or that I put on the uniform. That was, the last thought that I had. And that's the way, it's got to be, because you can't, if you're thinking too much about what could happen, you aren't going to be able to go out there and function and do the job. Yeah. You'd be too in your head. Mm-hmm. You won't be able to do it right. So you push that stuff to the back, you go out there and you do the job as best you can. So I left out for work that night with all that kind of shoved to the back of my mind, knowing it was a possibility though, because just given the nature of the job. And I went on into work. So the night goes on like normal. My buddies and I, we're like family. All right. It's I feel like really, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like soldiers and law enforcement kind of the only 2 professions that can really understand that brotherhood, like within the job. Mm-hmm. All right, just talking about a job, can understand that brotherhood within the job. Because soldiers, you could potentially be laying your life down for your fellow soldier.
Most definitely.
Law enforcement, you could be laying your life down for your brother or your sister in the uniform next to you. You just never know. And that's that bond that gets created, between you guys. It's really almost unexplainable. And so that, my squad and I, we're a family. We were a tight family. They were brothers and sisters of mine, not by blood, but they might as well have been. That's how tight we were. And so we're going on through our night. We're just doing the job. We're answering our calls. We're stopping for different violations and whatnot. And every night, at a point throughout the night, we would meet up together. Usually, like at the Sheets, because that's about the only place that was open at that hour. Because we work night shifts, so I didn't get off of work till about 5:30 in the morning. And we all meet up. They like to drink coffee. I hate coffee. I'm not a coffee guy. That never took to me. But they would drink their coffee and I would get milkshake. No joke to you, I would get milkshakes. It used to drive the young guys crazy that I work with because they'd be like, you're the only dude that can suck down 2 milkshakes, go out and get in a chase or something like that and not throw up everywhere. Yeah. I made it a point. I would never do it. Never do it because I knew I'd never live that down. So I'd never do it. But we met up, and my philosophy at work was I wasn't getting paid to stand around, sit around, talk, shoot the bull. I was getting paid to be out there to attempt to make our streets safer, for family, friends, strangers, everybody. That was my job, and I took that very seriously. If I could get one illegal weapon off the street that could potentially be used to murder somebody or seriously injure somebody, that was a massive win in my book. If I could get one dangerous, violent person off the street, win in my book. And so on and so forth. So I said to my buddies there at the Sheets that night, we had hung around for a little bit, and I can't sit still long. And I said to them, guys, we got to go do something. We got to get out of here. We got to go do something. Crime doesn't stop. There's stuff going on around the Sheets. Yeah. We ain't out there to see it because we're sitting in the Sheets. So we got to go. So I said to my buddy, one of them, I said, I'm going to go down to the highway. And I'll go down to 421. One of them, actually, I think 2 of them came with me. And I hadn't even put my car in my Tahoe in park yet. I literally had my hand on the shifter and had just pulled up perpendicular to the highway. So what I'm doing is I would do everything I did was based off of behavior. Okay. So like I wouldn't stop somebody based off of behavior because that's illegal, but I would pay attention to somebody based off of behavior. So like, somebody who doesn't have anything to hide is not going to be acting a certain way just because I'm around. You know what I mean? So that's the point of me doing what I was doing is I parked where cars coming down the road, the highway, can see the police on the side of the Tahoe. They know I'm a cop. I'm not hiding from them. I'm just sitting there where everybody can see me. And then however they act is going to determine if I'm going to pay them any attention or not. And so I pulled up, and this car's coming down the highway. And I see it, and it's already acting weird. It's already acting weird coming down the highway. Just driving mannerisms and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They make a weird lane change. They slow way, way, way down, which is not abnormal. People slow down when they see the police, but it's when you slow down, right? The speed limit's 60 and you slow down to 40. Right. That's weird. Something's what I mean? Something's up. You don't slow down that much. So they slow way, way, way down. And to take it even a step further, not only do they slow down, but they never accelerated. So like as they're approaching me, they're continuing to slow down. And they get in front of me, all right? And when they get in front of me, I can see, because I've got my bright lights on my Tahoe, so I can see stuff passing in front of me, and I can see a man in the driver's seat who's literally the steering wheel. This is a full-grown man, and the steering wheel is up on his chest, and he's got both hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2, like in driver's ed, okay? Mm-hmm. Just let's be honest, nobody these days drives like that, really. I mean, one hand on the wheel, kind of comfortable sitting position. That's how people do it. But this guy's up on the wheel. So then the person in the back seat actually looks at me, and I'm telling you what, it looked like they were going to pass out. They were terrified to see me sitting there. The person in the front passenger seat was leaned all the way back to the point where the B pillar of the car, that center post in the car, it was blocking all I could tell, there was a person sitting in the seat. That's it. Couldn't tell anything else out about them. So all those things are indications to me that something is going on, that there's something going on with that car, the driving. So then when they get past me, right, most people, when they get past, they're going to start to speed back up. Well, no, they kept, like I said, they kept slowing down. They stayed slowing down. Why? Because the driver's mind is so focused on me and looking back to see if I'm pulling out that he can't tell his foot to push the gas. He's just preoccupied. So I'm like, all right. So I pull out behind the car and I start to follow him. And we're going down the highway. And I run the plate, and the name comes back on the plate, and another officer who's nearby, he gets me over on a different channel. And he says, Sean, you remember that name? And what it was the owner of the car. We had arrested that man some time back for trafficking cocaine. So I recognized the name as soon as he called me out and said that. And I started thinking about it. I was like, wait a second. I don't just know that name from that. I know it from something else too. And I started thinking, I've seen that car before. And what it was about a month and a half prior to this. All right. I was a canine officer, so I did not handle calls usually. My position, my role was to be available in case somebody needed my dog. Okay. So about a month and a half or so prior, I just so happened to handle a call. And not just a call, but a death investigation, which is, I never do that because those take time. And I was going to be tied up on that for a while, but I handled this call that night. And it was a fella, his mother, he lived with his mother, and his mother passed away. And I handled the investigation. We run everybody's name, right? When we're with people in an investigation, we run everybody's name just to know who we're dealing with. I ran his name that night, and it come back that he had a warrant. Well, the way that I policed, I believe in very fair and empathetic policing. Okay, I don't. People are people. I'm human. I got a heart. I got feelings. I'm not just some cold, robot out here doing this job. This man's mom died. All right. He had no family. We tried calling family. Nobody would pick up a phone. He had nobody to help out with getting the arrangements done for his mother who just passed away in the same apartment that he lives in. He found her. So I said to him, you got a warrant, but your mom just died. You got a lot of stuff to get together. I'm not going to arrest you tonight. I'm going to let you go. But you need to get this straightened out. You need to get it figured out. Go turn yourself in when you get in a position to do it. Whatever, get this warrant taken out, but just take care of it. So that night I didn't arrest the man. I let him go. Fast forward to now I'm following this car on the highway, and it dawns on me. The man driving the car was that man that I let go that night.
Wow.
And so I'm like, all right. So I run his name to check and see if the warrant was still active or if he took care of it. And he hadn't taken care of it. It was still active. So I pull up beside him at a stoplight when we got off the highway, and I look over just to make sure that the guy driving is the guy that had the warrant. And I look over, I confirm it's him, it's the same guy. Everybody in the car still doing the same thing. Passengers still doing the same thing. Still can't see the guy in the front passenger seat. He's leaned so far back. But I know I can stop this car now because that guy's got a warrant. It's got to be served. I done let him go once. So I turn on my lights when we go through the intersection to stop him. They slow roll to the right, and they stop. Well, as they're slow rolling to the right, I see the front passenger side door start to crack open. And I know one of two things is going to happen right now. Either somebody's going to get out and run, which I've experienced this a lot. Okay, so this was not like shocking to me to see this happen. I've experienced this a lot. Okay. Either somebody's going to get out and run, or somebody's going to get out and, God forbid, start shooting. So I was just ready for whatever. All right, so I opened up my door, my driver's door. I had that all the way open, and I had my foot like hanging out of the door, ready to jump out as soon as we stopped. So as soon as we stopped, I jumped out of the Tahoe, and so did he. It was the front seat passenger. Mm-hmm. He jumps out of the car, and he starts to run the other direction away from me. Well, I was already out of my Tahoe, which I think surprised him. I think he was expecting me to still be in the car, not already out and walking up. Because by the time he jumped out and started to run, I was halfway up to the suspect vehicle already. I was that close. Mm-hmm. So he looks back and he sees me, and he stops. And this is the part, I've never seen somebody do this before. And this was something we talked about in court. I'd never seen somebody do this before. He stops. He makes eye contact with me and comes back to the car, to the front of the suspect vehicle, and he puts his hands on the hood. Now, I can see his hands the whole time, and that's the key. I just want to be able to see somebody's hands, because that's what can hurt me. So I see his hands. They're on the hood. I've got my weapon out and down by my thigh, right? Not pointed, nothing like that, down by my thigh, just in case somebody in the car or him decides to start shooting at me or something. So I'm giving him commands. You're under arrest. Stop. You're under arrest. Let me see your hands, which I can see. I'm like, but he's just looking at me, and he's not doing anything. He's not listening to what I'm saying. And every time that I would make a move toward him, one way or the other, he would just go the opposite direction, but keeping his hands on the car the whole time. Mm-hmm. So we do this
weird dance.
This weird dance around the car. And what happens is I let him put me in a very bad position. He goes to the back. I end up at the front. So now I'm at the front of this car with a guy in the driver's seat who's got a warrant, and it's running in drive, and then the person in the back seat. Now he's at the back of the car. He's still got his hands on it, and I realize this is not good. All that guy has to do is just accelerate forward real fast, and he's going to run me over. Right. So I said, all right. So I put my gun on the windshield, and I told the driver, I said, do not, and he recognized me. I said, do not put this thing in drive, do not drive forward. Put your hands on the wheel, stay exactly where you are. Nobody's going to get hurt. He does that. He puts his hands on the wheel. And once I see that, I start to kind of address him again. I'm a canine officer, so I told the guy, I'm going to let my dog go. Now, here's the thing about it, though. I couldn't actually let my dog go. So our policy doesn't allow us to bite somebody for a non-violent resisting. Right. So I knew I couldn't let my dog go to bite him. I knew that. But usually when you tell somebody that you're going to let the dog go, they usually straighten up. People are afraid of the dog. But I told him that, and he looked at me, and he said, let him go. Wow. He said, go ahead and let him go.
Wow. He
All
said,
right.
do it.
Yep. So here we are. So I can't let the dog go. Even if I wanted to, the button on my vest to pop the door open to get the dog out, quit working.
Oh, wow.
Didn't even work. So I'm kind of in a bad spot right now. So he ends up, it was like 2 seconds later, and he ends up just running. He runs around my Tahoe, goes into the woods, and I took about 4 steps to start to chase him, but then I was like, you know what? I've got somebody with a warrant, I know for sure. I don't know what's up with the passenger in the back seat, and I don't know what's in this car. So I decided to stay with the car. Let him go. I knew I could track him with my dog. So I let him run. And I get other cops there to set a perimeter and all that stuff. So to fast forward through that, the driver goes to jail. The passenger also had a warrant, and there was drug paraphernalia and stuff inside of the car. I took Jax out to track the guy who ran, the front seat passenger, who we couldn't get him identified. The driver didn't know his name. The person in the back seat was, according to the driver, this guy's girlfriend. She wouldn't tell us anything. So we didn't know who this guy was. Just knew what he looked like. That's it. And I Jack's tracks from where this guy ran into the woods, straight through the woods. And Jax is a good tracking dog. Like, he's very good at it. Straight through the woods, we come out into an apartment complex. This would be the same apartment complex that I later get shot in.
What time is it?
At this time, it's like 1:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Or so. Give or take, 1:30 in the morning. So we track out into this apartment complex, and Jax pulls hard, straight up on the sidewalk, down the sidewalk, and to a door, okay? This door that we track to is the door to the apartment of the driver of that car, all right? So I know for sure Jax tracked that guy. There's no doubt about it. The door was locked, all right? So we get permission to go inside and we check it. We checked it. He wasn't in there. If I was a betting man, I would bet everything I had on the fact that the guy who ran went to the door, tried to handle, it's locked, he can't get in, and then he just ended up going back into the woods and laying down. Because he's not from there. He's not from Kernersville. He's from High Point. He has no idea
Where he's going,
where he's going to go. He doesn't know. All he knows is that apartment. That's the only place he's been. So I think he's laid down in the woods. So my supervisor that night ended up calling me off the track. He said we got to cut it short. We're manpower, down manpower. We need to end this. So I take the driver to jail. My buddy takes the other person to jail, and that guy remains outstanding for a period of time. We didn't find him. So I go down to the jail. The only person who was polite and respectful this whole time, all right, with us. Obviously, the guy who ran wasn't, because he ran. But of the two, the driver and the passenger, the only one who was polite and respectful was the driver, the guy I had that I took to jail. He was yes, sir, no, sir, trying to help us out with identifying the guy. The girl, though, was calling us everything under the sun. She hated us, all right? So because of how the guy was with us, and he was the guy I took to jail, I made an agreement with him. I told him, if you get a written promise, which I kind of knew was going to happen anyway, because that's usually what happens in our area. Written promise just means that they sign a piece of paper that says, I promise to show up in court. And then they either show up or they don't. He got a written promise. So he signed a piece of paper, said, I promise to show up in court, and he was released. Okay. So what happens after you do that? You get released out of the jail. So I made an agreement with that guy. I said, if you get a written promise, it's at this point, like 2:30 in the morning, I'll take you back to your apartment. Because the dude's got no money. I already know that. And he was about 20, 25 minutes away from his home at the jail in Winston-Salem. He wasn't gonna get, how's he going to get back there? He wasn't going to get back there. So I was like, all right, I'll take you back to your apartment. I had to go back there anyway. So I take him back to his apartment, and I pull into his complex. We had moved his car out of the road and parked it in a parking space in front of his apartment building. I pull into the complex, and my lights, I had my bright lights on, they shine across the back of his car that was parked in the parking space. I see a man sitting in the driver's seat of the car. I could immediately tell, as soon as my light shone across the back of it, that it was the guy that ran from my traffic stop earlier. I could see it right away. Right. Well, as soon as my light shone across the back, he ducks down. All right? But I already seen him. It was too late. So I parked my Tahoe kind of behind the car. Now, mind you, the guy who I took to jail, he's still in my back seat. He can't get out. I've got to let him out. So he's sitting in my back seat uncuffed. And I get out of my Tahoe and I go to and make contact with this man. Still didn't know who he was or anything like that. Didn't know what he had, nothing. So I go to make contact with him, and I go up to like the B pillar of the car on the driver's side. And he could see full uniform. He could see police and all this stuff on me. And I'm giving him commands. You're under arrest. Same thing I did the first time around. You're under arrest.
Right.
Let me see your hands. The problem was it was so dark in that area where we were at in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see anything basically from his like belly button down. All right, because it was just too dark. I could see his chest up. So because I couldn't see his hands, I went ahead and I drew out my firearm and I had it at my waist, pointed at the ground. And I just said, look, man, let me see your hands. Well, he shakes his head no and says no to me sitting in the car. So about the time, like very shortly after he does that, he dives from the driver's seat over to the passenger side area of the car. I expected the car to be locked. But so I reached with my left hand to open it because in my mind, I just want to get my hands on him because I don't know what he's going for. I don't know what he's doing. If I can get my hands on him, I can kind of control his movements or at least try to. So I open the door with my left hand and I reach in for him. Well, I grabbed a hold of his arm, and as soon as I do, it was like a vacuum sucking me inside of this car. He was a bigger man than I was. And his momentum and everything, it just pulled me into the car. Now, here's the problem with it, all right? Problem is, I've still got my gun out.
Right.
It happened so fast that I didn't holster it up and before I got sucked into this car. So now we're in this is a 90s model Toyota Corolla. All right? This thing is tiny. Right. And we are two full-grown men, and I'm in an outer carrier vest. Wow. Gun belt. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff on me, and it was a all-out brawl inside of this car. Right. As soon as I got sucked in there, he's punching, kicking. I mean, everything and we're in this tiny area, and we fight like that for a little bit, and I somehow inside of the car managed to get him into a headlock, and I had him in a really good one, tight against my vest. And his head is locked in there. And somehow, he must have done it, because it wasn't me. The passenger side door of the car opens. All right? So now we fall out of the other side of the car onto the asphalt. Uh-huh. Problem number 2. When we fell out of the car, I fell out on my back. And he fell out on top of me. So I'm in a very disadvantaged position right now. I've got him in a headlock, and I've got my gun is still out. It's still in my right hand, but I don't feel like I'm at the level of shooting him, so I'm not even trying to do that. I just have my gun out, and I'm trying to control him with that headlock. Well, what happens is he has leverage on the ground with his lower body. So he starts... I wrap my legs around him and cross my ankles. I'm like on him, latched onto him like a leech, okay? I'm not coming off. I'm on the radio yelling for help. Give me units now. I'm fighting with one. I can hear people coming. I know they're coming off in the distance. I can hear sirens. Right. And I can hear people on the radio saying, I'm en route, you know. Well, that was the first time I could get on the radio. I could not get on it anymore in between that time and at the very end, which is the last time I got on the radio. So I'm latched onto him, and what he starts to do is he picks me up off the ground, right, with the leverage that he has from his lower body. He'll get me up off the ground, and then he'll slam me back down in the ground. And we just kept doing this. He'd get me up, slam me back down, up and slam me back down. And he kept kind of getting me higher every time. It was like he was building up strength or something. Like just he kept getting me higher up. So there toward the end, all right, now every time I slam on the ground, his head slips a little bit. It's coming a little bit more loose.
Oh, okay.
You know, because I'm hitting the ground and it's jarring me. So like my legs are coming loose, his head's coming loose. So this is getting bad quick. And so one of those last times he gets me up and slams me, I am trying to holster up. Like he comes out of the headlock, I try to holster up, I slam on the ground, and my hand hits the asphalt because it's out this way trying to put my gun in the holster. My gun would not go in the holster, by the way. And the reason why is because we've got a couple ways of retention, right, to keep the gun in the holster. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the hood of it got knocked up. And so it was blocking the opening to put it back in. I didn't know that. And I'm not going to think of that in that moment.
Right.
So my hand hits the ground and my gun bounces out of my hand and bounces off to the right. All right. At this point, I'm kind of laid on my side. And I can see the gun, but I can't get to it in the position that I'm in. He's still on top of me, kind of in between my legs, but he's completely loose now. So him and I make eye contact, all right? Like, I'll never forget looking into his eyes, and I see him look directly at the gun.
Like you're in an action movie.
Yep. And it's like, it's slow motion, but like, not the kind of slow motion you can take advantage of. It's like slow motion. There's nothing you
Everybody's
can do.
moving slower.
Yeah. And so I see he looks directly at the gun. So I know he's seen it. And I remember thinking to myself, no. Like I remember saying in my head, no. And as soon as he looks at it and we make eye contact with each other, he dives out from between my legs. And I'm looking at the gun, and I see his hand hit the gun. Wow. His hand hits the gun. It's not pointed at me right now, right? But his hand hits the gun, and he spins it while it's still on the ground. And when he spins it, I'm laid kind of on my side. It lines up perfectly with my face. Perfect. And as soon as it lines up with my face, he pulls the trigger while it's still on the ground.
Wow.
With his thumb. I just remember seeing the flash, the muzzle flash, and then hearing the boom of it go off. And the next thing I know is I felt like I got hit with a sledgehammer in my face.
Wow.
Right here. And everything kind of goes numb around my face here, my neck. It all kind of just goes numb. Now, I knew I'd been hit in the face, but I didn't know how serious it was. I mean, anything in the face is serious, but I didn't know how bad. Yeah. So I was trying to kind of look. Now I'm on the ground still, and I'm trying to look like kind of my lower peripheral vision, like to see if I could see anything. And when I did that, I could see all the blood. I could see all the pieces of bone falling out of my face and down onto my vest.
Yeah.
That was when I knew it was bad. As soon as I saw that was when my mind went to, you're probably going to die right now. But I closed my eyes, okay? This is where God starts to step in. This is where it gets good from a spiritual sense. I closed my eyes, honestly, fully prepared to open them back up and be in heaven. I was a saved Christian at the time this happened. Mm-hmm. I knew what was next for me. I knew that heaven was next. And I don't say this to sound cocky, because that's not how this is supposed to come off. I say this because being that saved Christian, I was not scared to die.
That's right.
Okay? There again, that's not cocky. That's not because Sean Houle is a superhero. That's because I knew where I was going, right? I had the hope of knowing where I was going. So I closed my eyes, and when I did that, I see my wife and my 2 boys. And when I tell you I saw them, I'm talking about I saw them and they looked as real to me as you guys sitting in front of me right now. I literally felt like I could reach out and grab them. That's how real they looked to me. And when I saw them like that, it was like this strength, this energy that the only way it can be described is supernatural.
Right.
That's it. It came over me like a flood. Mm-hmm. And I was ready to go. I mean, I was not to go to heaven. I was ready to go. Like, God, he made it apparent in that moment that it was not done yet.
Okay.
It was not,
okay.
My time was not up yet. And that, I opened my eyes back up and I see that same car that we fell out of, mm-hmm. and I'm still laying on the asphalt. I'm still alive. Okay. All right. Step one, God. All right. You showed me my wife and my kids. You gave me this supernatural energy and strength. I'm still alive. Okay. I believe you. I believe you. So now I'm looking around. I don't see the guy who shot me. All right. I don't know if he's ran off. I don't know if he's still there. I don't know where he is. So the cop in me starts to take over again. And I start looking around. Where did he go?
Right.
Well, I look down toward my feet and I see him. And he's standing, he's getting up from like a kneeled position. And he's raising the gun up to my head again. He was preparing to shoot me in the head again. He was going to execute me while I was laying there. Well, only by the grace and power of God and that supernatural strength, I get up. All right. I popped up off the ground like I hadn't even been shot. I felt like I was 15 again, like I was a kid again. I popped up off the ground and I spun and I reached out my left hand to go and grab the gun. Uh-huh. It was like an angel or the Lord, all of them, grabbed a hold of my uniform shirt and pulled my arm because I felt the metal of the muzzle touch my palm.
Wow.
And as soon as I felt it touch my palm, I closed. Mm-hmm. And I was already spinning, so I just kind of jerked it off to the left. And when I did that, I was jerking it away from my head. I didn't want him to have that aim to my head, so I jerked it to the left. And as soon as I did that, he shot me through the center of my left hand. Went out the back, and it blew off my middle finger. Which, hey, of all the fingers, right? It's not a bad one to go. So
that's incredible that you're able to find humor in that.
Yeah. So middle finger goes and blows out the back of the hand, and I continue to spin and fall back to the ground on my face. That's the last time I got on the radio. When I fell back to the ground, all I could say, and I could barely talk, but all I could say was, "I'm dying, help." I mean, imagine one of your soldiers, your fellow soldiers, getting on a radio, or this a brother who's like a blood brother to you getting on the radio and saying, "I'm dying, help." That's all I could say. That's all I knew to say in that moment. I'm dying, help. And it wasn't too much longer after that. I remember I could see up onto the street. The street was kind of elevated. We were kind of down in a low point. And I could see blue and red lights coming down the road. And I knew my family was showing up. Okay. I knew they were there, coming. And then the next thing is I could hear them yelling out to me, "Sean, stay with me. Sean, are you all right?" Of course they were saying, "Are you all right?" at first, when they didn't realize the extent of what happened. They would say, "Are you all right?" And then when they got up to me, it was, "Sean, stay with me, stay with me." They knew how serious it was. They knew I'd been shot twice. And I just remember one of my buddies, Corey McCrae, he wore a different uniform than the rest of us. He wore a gray uniform, so that's why I knew it was him. And he was standing near my head, and I remember grabbing a hold of his ankles and just begging, "Corey, don't let me die. Don't let me die. Please don't let me die." And now we get into God again. Yeah. Right? That's what this story is all about. And he is all over it. So my buddies get there, all right? They got to me 17 seconds after the second time I was shot. That quick. I don't know if they made him run off. I don't know if there's speculation I may have malfunctioned the firearm. because when you grab a semi-automatic pistol at the muzzle, you can malfunction it and cause it not to cycle. So they think I might have malfunctioned it, or they showed up and he got scared and ran.
Right.
Either way, them showing up, they needed to show up. I needed the help medically, and I needed to get him away from me. So then they call the ambulance. All right. EMS is taxed right now in emergency services. They don't have personnel. They're short-staffed. Their response times are kind of long. At 3:30 in the morning, all right, in Kernersville, in this random apartment complex, the ambulance was 4.5 minutes up the street from me. That's not a coincidence.
Right.
They don't just end up there at 3:30 in the morning by chance.
Right.
They're not just driving around joyriding.
Right.
The Lord, I believe 100%, absolutely had that ambulance, had that crew exactly where they were needed to be that night to get to me in under 4.5 minutes. Why that's so important is because the first shot that hit me in the face, it shattered my whole right side. It ricocheted up and it cut my carotid artery in half at the base of my skull. And then the bullet lodged behind my neck. So I was arterial bleeding from my carotid artery, and every second that went by, I'm bleeding out. And there's really, honestly, outside of getting to a hospital, there's really nothing anybody can do about that. They're not going to be able to hold enough pressure to get that artery to control that bleeding. So they pick me up when the ambulance gets there and put me on the stretcher. When they pick me up and put me on the stretcher, they find a gun underneath my body. Apparently, Quentin, the man that shot me, had a gun of his own. I never saw it. I didn't know it. But I guess when we were fighting, I knocked it out of his hands, which is why he ended up using mine instead of using his, because when I knocked it out of his hands, his was underneath me. He couldn't find it, and I didn't even know he had it. That obviously would have changed a lot of things if I'd known that he had a gun, but again, the Lord's plan, I don't question it. Right. The whole way to the hospital, I never lost consciousness, okay? I stayed awake the entire time. And the whole way to the hospital, I'm thinking about death. I'm thinking about heaven. I'm thinking about what I'm going to see. And I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about my kids. My 8-month-old Tanner at the time, my 5-year-old at least had memories of me. We had made memories together. My 8-month-old, all the things we'd done together in his 8 months of life, he was going to have no memory of any of that. And I knew that. And I was thinking about that over and over again. I can't leave. Lord, please don't let me leave my 8-month-old child here with not even a memory of me. I don't want to be that story. Right. And the whole way to the hospital, I stay awake. They get me to the hospital, and they put me under. There again, the Lord has proven time and time again, I feel like in probably a lot of people's lives who are watching this podcast right now, and certainly in my own, that He is the great orchestrator of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he can make anything happen and put anybody exactly where they need to be. Well, they get me to the hospital, and there's 2 trauma surgeons on staff that night. All right? They're both incredible doctors. But the one who takes my case, his name is Dr. Mowry. This man is 6'7", I don't know. He's something like somewhere in between 6'6" and 6'8". He's extremely tall, huge guy. He's the only one that could have done this, and he did it. He realized that I couldn't be taken to the operating room and live because they had to control the bleeding. So before anything could be done, the bleeding had to be controlled. Well, he realizes that, and so what he decides to do, he sticks his fingers in the hole in my face and finds where the artery got severed up here. He's the only one with fingers long enough to do this. The other doctor was about my size, my height, my size, hands about as big as mine, I'm not going to be able to reach back up in.
Right.
This man had fingers long enough to reach back up in there. He pinched the artery off, and he held it for 45 minutes. That man stood next to my bed and pinched the artery with his 2 fingers, holding it.
Wow.
The whole time he's doing that, a team gets called in from home to come in and do the first surgery to me. They go in through my pelvis, and they put in coils and stents up through the artery, and that's how they get it officially controlled. Mm-hmm. But during that time, I bled out over 3.5 times. I required 72 units of blood. To put that in perspective, the average human, adult human, has about 10 units in them. Mm-hmm. All right, so they gave me 7 times what we're sitting here with us in in us right now, plus 2.
Wow.
There is no medical explanation, and I've gone through this with doctors. There's no medical explanation for why I lived that night.
Yeah, it sounds like an absolute like miracle.
Yes,
sorts, for sure.
So I know whenever you was talking, you were saying how you were thinking this and God was doing this, and I think that is common in a man to do that, for one, and for two, being a believer, having that assurance in Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
You was like, either way, I'm gonna be all right. Either way. But Lord, let me see my child grow up and have some memories of me.
Yep.
And I think that's enough within itself. It goes to show how that father is very important in people's lives, and that don't have a father in their lives. And I'm sure that ran through your mind like, my son needs to have remembrance of that figure, that structure that, is the head of this household.
Absolutely.
And I thank God and praise God for having his hand and having everything orchestrated and everything in motion for you to be here right now to talk about this miracles. People think that miracles don't happen, but miracles happen every day.
Yes, they do.
Just thing is, people don't see it.
Yep.
People don't see it. The carnal mind can understand the spiritual.
Yep.
So they're constantly looking at things from a different lens where they cannot comprehend what's going on. And I am, I'm just glad to be part of this conversation and hear your story. Your story climaxed, and then it went to a soft place, and then it went to how God's glory is constantly shining on your life, man. And I really appreciate you coming here and sharing this with us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's touch on something to expand on what exactly led to the events in February.
Yep.
Winston was in a place, I'm going to call it a pressure cooker. You had just had the death of George Floyd. The country was in disarray. Follow-up in Winston-Salem, particularly, you had the death of John Neville, which added to the flames.
Yep.
Would you say that those events added to pressure for you when your event happened to respond in a negative way?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I'm of the opinion, this is my opinion, so I'm not going to let, outside influences that don't have anything to do with Sean Houle or interactions I've had with people influence how I do the job, right? I'm going to respond how the law says I can respond, And it's going to be in a fair, level-headed, rational type way. It's not going to be. I'm not going to amp myself up for any sort of outside influence, and I'm not going to lower myself to the point where, because see, at the end of the day, right? So, cops got to look at it like from the standpoint of the lowering, okay? So if you are afraid to react to a situation appropriately, right? Like the cops, all they got to do is they just got to revert back to the training that they have. That's it. We're trained. They're trained at what they're supposed to do. They know what they're supposed to do. So we've got policies in place, we've got standard operating procedures, we've got laws in place, not only for citizens, but those same laws guide our decisions too. So from a standpoint of lowering yourself to where it's unsafe, right? Now you're not reacting because you're afraid of consequences.
Yeah.
Right? But then you've got the other side of the spectrum. You amp yourself up and you do something dumb.
Yeah.
Or you take things too far because of a situation. You got to find that happy place right in the middle. And I always was able, no matter what was going on in the world around me, to find that place. I found that if you treated somebody with, now there's some people that it doesn't matter how much respect you give them, they're not going to give it back to you.
True.
That happens on occasion. But I found that in the job, generally speaking, if you treated somebody with or gave somebody respect, you would get it back. And that's the way that that's the way that I conducted myself. You give respect to get respect. And then if they take it somewhere else, then you handle that situation appropriately. But as far as how I reacted that night to the situation I was faced with, I don't think any of that had any sort of influence in it at all.
Yeah. Have you felt that you were pressured to respond one way or another from societal pressures?
No. If anything else, if anything, honestly, the Lord had made it very clear to me that, all right, Sean Houle, what are you going to do with this situation right now? All right. I wasn't looking at it from what is the world telling me I should do with this situation right now? What is society telling me I should do with this situation right now? I was looking at it as, what is the Lord telling me I should do with this situation right now?
That's the difference between being a believer and a non-believer.
Yep.
The culture is going to tell us one thing,
but
it's the culture that we create
exactly
in our homes.
Exactly.
The way we have a Christian worldview.
Yep.
Right. We want good things for everybody, no matter race, creed, color, religion, whatever the case may be. Yep. We want all people to be saved.
Oh yeah.
And there are some hiccups going to come around, but I see what you're saying. That's really good. That's really good.
From a Christian worldview standpoint, I don't believe that you can really look at anything from a societal perspective or viewpoint. Because
so you'll be double-minded.
Yeah, because what is this world? This world is fallen.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It is a fallen world we live in. That this is Satan's playground. Mm-hmm. This is what Satan lives for. And so I believe in order to make the truest, best decision, you have got to come at it from a Christian worldview. You have to. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that you see everybody as not this color, this creed or that creed. You see everybody as a child of God.
Right.
And you see everybody as a. When I look at the man that shot me, I look at him honestly with sadness, because that's a man that he's clearly lost his way in this world. He's he's not made his way to the cross. If he had made his way to the cross, if he was living from that Christian worldview, this likely wouldn't have happened.
Whenever you looked into his eyes, I got one question. Whenever you look into his eyes and y'all pause that moment, what did you see in his eyes?
Nothing. I mean, I honestly, it was like emptiness, and that to me is even more of an indication that that's an individual being led, guided, and directed by something other than the Holy Spirit.
Right.
There was nothing behind those eyes. It was like he was staring through me. Okay. It was like it was like there was another person behind me. He was just looking right through me. Okay. And maybe fear.
Okay.
So this is an incredible experience. And in response to how you felt towards that person, I think I can speak for myself. Me and that person would probably have a blood beef. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. just being completely honest, you were truly the salt of the people. But during this entire experience, from being shot, going through therapy, and I think you're still going through therapy, 2 years later after the event, has your faith wavered, or has your faith, have you had bad days in connection with your faith?
So right from the beginning, okay, laying in the hospital bed, I woke up 3 days later to see my wife sitting next to my bed. I was in a medically induced coma for 3 days, and then I woke up. I couldn't talk. My mouth and jaw was wired shut. I had all these tubes and stuff going in me. My hand was, obviously had to be reconstructed and everything. But it was, like I had mentioned, I think just a second ago, it was very early on. It was, all right, what am I going to do with this? In my mind, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this situation? Okay. Lord, what do you want me to do with this situation? And that my faith kicked in immediately. There was it was immediately about, Lord, I believe by faith that there is a plan here. There's a reason why this happened. I don't know why. I'll never understand why. It's not our place to. But there's a reason why this happened. And it was all right. It was knowing and understanding that from my human, far inferior mind. Where do we go now? Where do we go from here? Well, he settled in my heart right from the start not to hate. All right. Going back to our discussion that, about the things going on in society at the time that this happened, I knew and was well aware that there was already enough hate in society that I did not need to compound it by adding my hatred to it for, this man that shot me, for maybe I generalize something or whatever because of the situation that I experienced. Yeah. There was no place for that. All right. Because why though is the key. Why? Because who gets honor and glory from that? Satan does. That's God does not get any honor and glory from that scenario at all. And my mind was made up early on. I wanted this situation to be positive in the long run.
Okay.
And so I started thinking about, how do I make it positive? The first key was not to hate. Second key was forgiveness.
Okay.
Really, that kind of went hand in hand, honestly. It was that was like, I say first and second, but it was really kind of at the same time. I forgave Quentin a long time ago. I wasn't able to physically tell him I forgave him until fairly recently, but I forgave him a long time ago.
How did that go?
It actually went really well. I got to look him right in his eyes, just like I'm looking at you guys. He maintained eye contact with me. He never looked down, never looked away. And he just nodded his head the whole time I was talking to him. And I told him, I said to him, now I'm paraphrasing, so I can't remember exactly word for word what I said, but I said something to the effect of, I said to him, Quentin, I don't hate you. I never will. And I've forgiven you for what you did for me, or did to me. I told him that my forgiveness, however, is not what he needs to be concerned with. I said, Quentin, the forgiveness you need to be concerned with is the forgiveness of our Father in heaven. Forgiveness of our Father in heaven. That's who you got to be concerned with as far as forgiveness is concerned. I told him, I said, Quentin, I had a decision to make, right? I was at a fork in the road when this happened to me. I could go this way or that way. I could go down the road of I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm filled with hate, all these things.
And that unforgiveness having power over you, the way you think, your actions, the way you treat other people, that unforgiveness in your heart would do that.
Exactly. It definitely would. And so at that crossroads, at that fork in the road, and that's the wonderful thing about our God is free will. He allows us to make decisions, like the decision we make for Christ when we accept him. And I had a decision to make. I had a free will decision to make. Was I going to follow this path or that path? And I chose on my own free will to follow the path of the Lord, to walk in his will. And I told Quentin he now has a decision to make. He's at that same fork in the road, except just in a different place. He now has to make the decision for the rest of his life, which will be probably in prison, but for the rest of his life, what path is he going to walk? Is he going to be the same Quentin that he was the night he shot and tried to kill me? Or is he going to be a new Quentin? Is he going to make his way to the cross? Is he going to accept that free gift that the Lord has given us through his son to have a relationship with him, to have salvation? Is he going to accept that free gift, and is he going to be a new man? Because Quentin, he has the opportunity, if he makes that decision, to affect a lot of lives in a positive way in the system that may not be able to be affected in a positive way in any other situation. He could now evangelize inside of the prison for the Lord because he's turned his life around. That's my prayer for him. I've prayed that for him. I told him that's the opportunity that he has sitting in front of him right now, and it's a matter of if he's going to accept that, if he's going to do that or not. Now, after I got to speak with him, he didn't speak with me in the courtroom, but we ended up in a very small room behind the courtroom, which wasn't an accident. We weren't supposed to, there again, this is the Lord orchestrating stuff. We weren't supposed to be in the same room together outside of the courtroom. Well, they accidentally led me into a room that he was in and hadn't got him out in time. So we came face to face, and he did apologize to me in that room. He said he was banging. They kind of put him back into a holding cell that was in that room before we could be like right next to each other, right face to face with each other. But he was banging when they put him back in that room, he was banging on the glass yelling, I apologize, I apologize.
Wow. Did you feel a release whenever you made up in your mind you forgave him?
Yes.
Did you feel a release?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, the word tells us, and if we don't forgive our brother, our Heavenly Father will not forgive us.
Yep.
And forgiveness is key to what we believe.
Yep.
You know, Jesus Christ died for our sins, forgave us. You know, he paid the ultimate sacrifice. He loved us before we even knew him. So now, it's like you said, you are reciprocating that same type of love to another person that you don't even know. Yep. And I think that's powerful that you stepped out on faith in that magnitude.
That's what that was faith.
And be able to do it in front of people.
Yeah.
You know, and continue to talk about Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
What would that say of me and my faith, and what would that say about our God. Think of all that we do to God on a daily basis. I mean, we ain't nothing. None of us. We're sinners. We're lowly sinners, and we fail. We'll never live up to the standard God has. And we fail him on a daily basis. But what does he do every time? As long as we go to him and ask, he forgives us every time. And I told Quentin, I said, the great thing about our God is he will forgive you for this. Yeah. It's not a question of if. Yeah. He will forgive him for this.
So, question. You're a married man.
Yes, sir.
2 kids, father and mother. How has this entire endeavor affected them?
It's been extremely tough. Well, you know my wife on a personal level, and so you know how sort of she's a strong woman. Yeah, I mean, you know that. And she isn't much for showing her emotions and kind of letting you know what all is going on inside that head. But it's definitely had a pretty profound effect on her. She's become significantly more emotional. I can see how the stress of the whole thing has really it's made her a little bit more anxious. It's made her, she clings now to our family unit in a way that it's not like she clung to our family unit before, but now it is to another level because I left that day and she almost never saw me again. Right. So her mind automatically goes to,
this is a second chance.
Yep. And this anytime we walk out that door could be the last time we see each other. And so she clings to that now. And now my youngest boy, he was 8 months old, so he has no idea of anything that occurred. But my oldest boy, he does, and he's very aware of everything. And it was hard for him in the beginning. He would wake up obviously he's very young in his faith. He's only 6 now, and so he's very young in his faith, and he has a long way to go to understanding everything, But he would, in the beginning, he would wake up in the middle of the night having a night terror, and he'd wake up and he'd be crying, and he'd say, "I'm not ready to go to heaven yet." Because then his little brain just doesn't understand. Processes, he just associated the situation with all the fear of, everybody else around expressed of almost losing me. And so that's kind of how he associates it. And he's a lot better now. He's not had any of those episodes where he's woke up in the middle of the night for quite some time. And I'm very open with him about it all. I mean, I have straight up explained to him that Daddy was shot with a gun by a man that wanted to hurt me, and I don't really hide it, because I want him to. I feel like that would do worse for him if I tried to tiptoe around the whole thing, And he'd find things out from other people, and it wouldn't be good. But all in all, I think probably the most profound effect that it's had on our family is just the cohesion. Yep. We have spent more time with each other in the aftermath, in the wake of this, than we ever did, I'd say, before, because she had her job, I had my job. We're going 100 miles an hour, all these different directions. Now we've really slowed down and realized that this time on this side of life, while it's not what we're living for, it's precious. And we have to enjoy every moment of it with each other before ultimately we do get called home, and make the most of it. And that's another. I think I know I keep circling back to some things, but you talk about the urgency to feel a certain way. I will tell you, I think the most urgency I've had to feel a specific way has been from a faith perspective and urgency to, in this short amount of time that I've got left on this side of life, to profess the power of the almighty and gracious and merciful God that we serve. That's the urgency I've felt more than anything else around me. Take society, take all that stuff out of it. The urgency I have felt is, you know what? When I look at somebody now, when I look especially when I look at another cop, because I'll go to a lot of law enforcement related events and try and speak faith to them and try and be encouraging and be motivational. And when I look at, but not just a cop, and anybody, when I look at a person now, this is what I see because of what happened to me. Because I replay that what happened to me every day in my head. It's like I can't help it.
Yeah, it's just seared in your brain.
It's just seared in there. I don't replay it in a negative way. I replay it in a way that I refresh my memory with all that God did on a daily basis. Yeah. But when I look at a person now, I replace myself with that movie reel playing in my head. I replace myself with, we'll just say you, for example, okay? I'll look at you and I replace you or me with you. And I think to myself, what if this person is not saved? What if this person is laying there in the position I was, dying, okay, leaving this side of life and moving on to the next, not having been saved? And how tragic is that?
Right.
That this person is more, because I know the human thoughts running through a person's mind on death's doorstep. I know now. And you want to talk about as hopeless as you could possibly get, being on the verge of dying and thinking all that's left is a coffin 6 feet in the ground, and that's it. And all the rest of it is you're leaving everything behind. The hope that we have as saved Christians is knowing that this is not the end. This is really just the beginning. We're gaining eternity. And all those saved behind us, all our family members, all these saved people behind us, we're fixing to see them again on the other side. And we get to live in our glorified bodies, leaving what we're leaving behind is the mess.
Yeah. I feel your urgency, because I have to tell people, hey, I'm about to get loud right now because I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
And we have to, look and rethink, especially our sin. I talk about sin a lot.
Yep.
But I don't want to, I know God has forgotten my sin, right?
Yep.
I need to remember my sin, right? So I can see what God has brought me out of.
Yep.
And how much he loves me, that sinful guy that I once was.
Yep.
And now I'm new creation, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm washed in his blood.
Yes, sir.
Right? Now I know that I know I'm saved.
Yes, sir.
And I've been redeemed.
Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? That there is one person, one mediator, one became sin that knew no sin, and that being Jesus Christ. I know, and I'm assured where I'm going to be whenever I die.
That's right.
And it's like, do you know? Do you know? And that's a question people have to ask every day.
Yep.
We don't know whenever we pull out, hey, is there going to be an accident? There's a lot of people riding their motorcycles right now because it's getting warmer.
Yep.
Guys are dying.
Yep.
Whether it be whoever's negligence, whatever the case may be, people are dying. People are dying every day. It's over 100,000 people that die every day.
Yep.
And that plays in my mind. It's like, how many people are saved?
Yep.
And how many people are being tormented right now? But
Exactly
I
right.
yield.
So let's talk a little bit about Houle Strong.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean to you, your family, in the community of Winston-Salem?
So Houle Strong to me is absolutely, it's a state of mind, all right? It's, of course, obviously it's got my last name in it, but you could replace my last name with anything. Faith strong. It's a state of mind. It's all right. I took a situation, and I want you to understand when I say I don't want for 1 second anybody to think that I am replacing what God did. This is God's story, period. Mm-hmm. But for the sake of this podcast, I took a situation, thanks to God, that could have very, very easily been just another negative headline inside of this world. Yeah. And instead, what's happened is I've turned this, with that help, into a positive. And so I believe that a lot of things start, if you go into something with that sort of negative mindset, you've got to pull the positive from every situation. And having that Christian worldview is certainly going to help you do that. But you've got to look at the positive. So instead of looking at, all right, I can't be a cop anymore, right? So here's one example. I can't be a cop anymore. I had that job taken away from me, all right? From a societal standpoint, the job was taken away. Mm-hmm. Now I've got a choice here. I'm going to look at that. I can look at that from a strictly negative standpoint and think to myself, who am I now? What am I going to do now? Right. I was Officer Sean Houle. What am I now? Or I can look at, okay, I can spin that into a positive. The job's been taken away. Now I have more time. The Lord has allowed me more time to focus on ministry that maybe I've been neglecting or running away from my whole life up until this point. This is a new plan.
You know what's so amazing to me about this story and about you and about us? Race has not been brought up, not one time.
No.
And the conversations need to be like this.
Absolutely.
It needs to be white men, black men, Asian men, African, Jamaican, everybody from different cultures sitting around and learning each other.
Yep.
Because you know what? We all have a soul and we all gonna die.
Yep.
We all got a story.
Yeah, and we all got a story. So we just need to, sit down and break bread with each other and really see the humanity instead of what the pictures are being painted of certain individuals, whether it be how they look, their tone of their skin, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
I think we need to have more conversations like this instead of being all black panels, all white panels.
Yeah.
It needs to be a mixture.
It does.
Because men are men.
Yep.
And one thing whenever somebody says from my opinion, this is personal to me. Whenever somebody says black man kills white man, that media, they don't know that they're doing it. Or I'm sorry, the people don't know they're doing it.
Yeah.
But the media knows they're doing it. They put value on one person over the next.
Oh, yeah.
And it's creating societal conflict.
Yeah.
Right? But the more we talk about Jesus, the more we come together. Mm-hmm. But how much are we allowed to talk about Jesus now? How much?
As much as they'll allow us is the problem.
Right.
It's censored.
Right. So I just wanted to just put that out there, and I'm glad that this is about men of God. This is about forgiveness and not about race. And I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, sir.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. So, for people struggling with their faith, I guess this would be my last question. What do you suggest for them?
So, you've got to stick with, all right, the thing about faith, it's sights unseen, okay? We've not seen Jesus we weren't alive in biblical times. We weren't one of the disciples. We didn't physically see Jesus and these miracles that were being performed. We haven't physically seen God. We don't know what he looks like. We've not physically seen heaven. But you believe, it's a belief. You believe by faith, right? That he exists. That Christ did all that was said that Christ did by these disciples, by everything that the Bible says. You believe that heaven exists. You believe that in the midst of chaos, that you have a sovereign, almighty God sitting right next to you that will not let you fall, and that does truly have a plan. I think we get so caught up in living this life and living out our plan. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here I'm not above anybody. I'll be the first to tell you, my plan, Sean Houle's plan, was I was going to retire after 30 years of being a police officer.
Yeah.
That was my plan. And I was well on my way to it. But you know what? The fact of the matter is, though, that we have our plans, but then there's God's plan, and that trumps all. God's plan is far above our own plan and is far better than our own plan. We just got to yield to it.
Yeah.
We got to yield to it. So I say, if you're struggling with your faith, just know that, first of all, you're not alone, okay? There's a lot of people inside of this world, hurt and broken, struggling with their faith right there with you, okay? You are not isolated in some corner struggling with it alone. If you're struggling with your faith, I encourage you to, preferably if you're a female, find companionship in a Christian, other Christian female. Find guidance. Your pastor, get with your pastor if you're struggling with your faith. Get in the Bible. Just start reading. Like was touched on earlier, we read about miracles occurring in biblical times. Okay, we see miracle after miracle after miracle. All the things Christ did while he walked as man on this earth. We forget, I think, that it didn't stop. Right. It's still happening. And that you touched on that earlier. Miracles are still happening in modern times. It's just you're maybe not as exposed to, you're not hearing about it, you're not seeing it, whatever. But it's still happening. And understand this too, that while my story is a story about a miraculous healing, your story may not be this miraculous healing or this miraculous event. Your story may be that God is molding you and shaping you like clay in a potter's hand.
That's right.
Over a period of time through your trial or your tribulation. And you just got to understand that part of that faith is patience. Have patience in knowing that, believing by faith that God is working. He is working. But if you're struggling with your faith, though, it's a very real thing. Just absolutely, if there's a local New Testament church near you, get plugged in with them. Get plugged in with a fellow Christian, and I encourage you. So one of the biggest things about faith is the step, stepping out. Like with Quentin in the courtroom, I did not know how that was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to say until the moment came to talk. But all that was a step out in faith. That's all that was. I stepped out in faith believing that God was going to provide the words. And sometimes inside of your life, all it's going to take to get you kind of over that hump is to just make a bold step in faith in one direction or the other. And just believe that God's got you, and he will show you that he's got you. One way or another, he will show you that he's got you.
Wow. Well, Sean, this has been an incredible interview. I think anybody and everybody that sat here and listened to this has done at some point some self-reflecting. It's been really, really incredible. Would you like to drop us a final thought?
Final thought on faith. The word tells us, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all these things should be added unto thee. So I tell everybody to seek Jesus Christ. We see God wrapped in the flesh that gave himself and people that didn't love him. They flogged him and spit on him and slapped him and treat him like he was a nobody. But a couple of days prior, you're saying Hosanna in the highest, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Yeah. So we have to, once again, pay attention to what's going on around us and have hope. People's faith are being challenged, and it's going up and down because they don't have any hope.
Yep.
It's evidence of things not seen. You're not gonna see it. You're not gonna see it. God has already laid it out. Yep. You did not know that you were going to be, in the military, and then God chose you to have all these people come here with all this wisdom, all this guidance, right? All this knowledge to place to the listeners. Yep. And now God has allowed this another platform to talk about him and faith. Yep. And that faith, what we do? We sit on a cliff and somebody's sitting there handing us a parachute. Everybody jump with parachutes, but you don't want one. You say you're just gonna jump. Whenever you die, that's it.
Yep.
But everybody else is putting on parachutes. Everybody that you see that's strong around you, that's consistent, they putting on parachutes.
Yep.
But you just said, nah, I'm good. I just let it be. If I fall on the water or fall on that sharp cliff, I think I'll be okay. Mm-hmm. Versus the person that's chilling, toggling.
Sure. Yep, for sure.
There's a big difference.
For sure.
Yes, sir.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Baba. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Pastor Baba, Mr. Harry Cowan.
Yes.
Thank you so much for stopping by, Sean. This has been incredible. Guys, if you made it this far, you are the realest of the realest ones. This thing ran about well over 87 minutes, but it's packed with good stuff. This is the longest podcast that we had, but it was packed with a lot of good stuff. Hey guys, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, podcasters. We're everywhere right now. So if you want to sign up for classes or you want to check out our podcast, go to CarolinaBallisticsTA.net or go to Carolina Ballistics and Training Academy. We are the Dan and Dave Show. I am Daniel Irwin. Dave, the man, the myth, the legend, Harris will be back. So sit tight. All right, guys. Thank you so much.